Dare I say?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for returning. So we're going to end the recess and reopen the meeting. And at this point, I'll recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to take from the table the motion that we were working on before the break.
Second.
And then
I
I'd
didn't
like
think
to.
so. Let's have a quick vote then on the motion to remove from the table the previous items, of which we have a quorum present. All those in favor of removing from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes. All those, so we can go to the next thing. So Councilmember Palmisano, you still have the floor.
So actually, I'd like to call the question on Andrew Johnson's amendment to the motion.
Okay. So all those in favor of calling the question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. So on to the amendment proposed by Councilmember Andrew Johnson. All those in favor of that amendment as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. That item fails, which I think returns us to the main motion, which was presented by Bender, Palmisano, Glidden, Gordon, and Warsami. So if that's the correct authors, forgive me if I put them in the wrong order, and we can continue with motion or debate on that amendment.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to point to the new fresh markup in front of you, unimproved paper. Thanks to Councilmember Bender. This motion also adds Councilmember Warsami as an author to it. The only thing that's changed on this is that we've cleared up the typo, that this is on a one-time basis. And to speak to that motion, I want to mention a couple of things, some of which have been mentioned before. As Council Vice President Glidden mentioned, this is one-time money. Also, as I think was mentioned, this is a small portion of the LED acceleration money that's proposed for this year. There's currently $150,000 standing in our capital budget for LED conversions. What accelerated the conversion this year in the mayor's proposed budget was an additional $325,000. So the mayor's proposed budget for 2017 says we would spend $475,000 total in 2017 in LED conversions. This plan reduces it to $325,000 of acceleration money for that program next year. And as I think we all commonly acknowledge, these are about difficult choices. This certainly isn't a great choice to be making, but this is just something that is speaking to, amongst all of our priorities, where are those priorities? I want to mention that at least two of the three programs here that are associated with our domestic abuse prevention are definitely eligible to use recast money for in the future. This is one-time money, but we do think that after the that recast strategy is socialized and after that strategy is set, that in future years, we could very likely use that recast grant money that we're receiving that could make this into 5 years of funding for this kind of a program, after which we can see the results and examine it based on that. Also, as Council Vice President Glidden mentioned, the CDBG money that currently goes to this kind of money fluctuates year to year. And over the past 3 years, DAP funding has gone down for this important work. With a little bit of that additional clarity and additional understanding, I just point to the fact that these are tough choices, but as we've all been discussing, these seem like very worthwhile strategies to pursue, and I urge support for it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember. I think our queue is restarted, so if there's any other questions on or comments on this item. Not seeing any. I just did want to give the opportunity to Ms. Green to follow up on Councilmember Cano's question on the funding and total amount. And so, Ms. Green, if you could do that really quickly, I'd appreciate it.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano. In the 2017 budget, Mayor's recommended budget, there's $271,000. $206,000 is one time, and $65,000 is ongoing for domestic abuse activities.
Can you clarify this total sum?
The total sum is $271,000.
Thank you very much. I think that it's really helpful to have the final answer on that question. It was a great question to ask in the first place, so thank you for bringing it up. And thank you for the finance staff for answering that. Additional comments and questions on this item? Yes, Council President?
I'm sorry, I'm not in the thing yet here.
That's fine.
I'd like to ask Ms. Green a question. Is that okay? If I ask Ms. Green a question?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Does that include the grant funding that is associated with the police department's domestic hotspots initiative?
Chair Quincy, Council President Johnson, that grant goes away this year.
Uh-huh.
So there is $65,000 in ongoing that's in the city attorneys, and there's $137,000 in one-time money for the hotspot.
And is that a part of the $271,000?
All of that is a part of the $271,000, including the $62,000 that's in CDBG.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. Further questions and comments on the underlying motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for that and for coming back promptly so we can continue the work. I think we'll begin the next amendment question, and that is to Councilmember Andrew Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe there's a motion being passed out right now. This is a staff direction. I know I sent an email out to colleagues on this around having the Public Works Department look at our fleet as it comes to city vehicles and looking at how we can ultimately, and what the recommendation that they would have would be towards phasing out fossil fuel vehicles from the city fleet. This staff direction is supported by staff. I appreciate my colleagues, Reich and Gordon, working with me on this. It also recognizes, too, that there's going to be some exceptions in there where currently there just are not, especially among heavy equipment, the solutions available today to get to electric or natural gas for an economical price, but that we're working towards ultimately phasing out fossil fuel vehicles and coming back to the council with information on what that budgetary impact will be so that we ultimately have our eyes wide open on this and can make an informed decision on how we can take this important step in terms of climate justice and in terms of becoming a greener, more sustainable city. So I appreciate all the work of staff on this important environmental initiative.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think my colleague, Councilmember Johnson, aptly described the motivation behind this. And I believe we got this tied to our existing fleet policy, so it's really incorporated in there, but it really expands on it and drills down with a data-driven approach to getting some cost-benefit analysis to how we could maybe not only do it and do it right, but maybe even accelerate our intentions on this matter. So I think it teases up for some good work to come.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if the the leaders of this staff direction could explain why September 1st. That seems like a long time to do this. I don't know what you want to call it, feasibility study analysis, internal analysis. I'm just curious about the timing and if there's a component about tying this to inform the budget or to review budgetary impact. It'd be nice to have a little bit more time to hear back before anything gets put into or programmed into our budget for next year.
Thank you very much for the question. Councilmember Wright, could you answer that one for us?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The timing of this was derived in consultation with staff and the type of analysis being called upon, the scope of the material and equipment that we'd be reviewing. And we also wanted to take the time to make sure that our look wasn't just internally or regionally, but we wanted to have an international sort of compendium of best practices and have a solid cost-benefit analysis of each and every one, plus an implementation package. So it wasn't just a review of some data, but also how it would be implemented and the cost associated with that over time. It wouldn't just be one budget allocation in the following year.
Councilmember Cano, okay. Other comments or questions on this staff direction? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much. Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to bring a motion to amend the 2017 Mayor's recommended budget to the Departments of Office of City Clerk and Community Planning and Economic Development on an ongoing basis by decreasing Office of City Clerk by $118,202 and 1 FTE, and increasing the Community Planning and Economic Development Department by $118,202 and 1 FTE for the purpose of programming and outreach at the Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center. And I would like to,
You'd like to speak to that motion?
Yes.
Please
Yes, sir.
do. Just wanted to make sure that the clerk's office has received copies of both of these motions for recording purposes.
Yep, have it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Warsame. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the Opportunity Center that we've been working on for the last 2.5 years. And as you might be aware, the Opportunity Center we have found the funding to open the center, but there was one position that was missing, which was for a navigator or a program manager at the center that was going to be housed with the city of Minneapolis. And thanks to the city clerk's office, and especially thanks to Director Casey Carr, we were able to find one FTE that we could utilize. And I've also spoken, and I'd like to appreciate and give thanks to Director Craig Taylor for helping us with this move. So basically what it is just moving one FTE from one department, the city clerks, to the CPED for the navigator role at the Opportunity Center.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your leadership on this item. Are there other comments or questions on this amendment? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item carries.
Thank you.
Council Vice President Glidden.
All right. I actually have two motions if you'd like me to do both of them, but I'll start with the first one and just do what's in queue, and this is getting passed out right now. This is a motion that is actually really just a staff direction, and I will explain what this is about. In our budget process in 2014, Councilmember Cano had initiated a motion that was in anticipation of President Obama's executive order relating to DACA that multiple departments in the city coordinate with some outside organizations around what might be a coordinated response to needs of our immigrant community that might be arising due to the president's executive order. I just give that background to say that city staff has been involved in partnerships before on how that we can leverage our support of immigrant communities. This motion directs the city coordinator's office to designate $35,000 of one-time budget resources within their budget to be allocated for the purpose of funding support services for immigrant families. This is further directing staff from the city coordinator departments, including intergovernmental relations, neighborhood community relations, and I've just had a request from the coordinator's office to add civil rights to this list, to work with community stakeholder organizations such as the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota and others to clarify priority needs for immigrant community services and research potential additional financial and in-kind support from private and other public agency sources. Staff will report to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee with a proposed plan no later than March 31st, 2017. And if I could just make a couple comments on this. As we all know and have heard from our constituents, this is a time of great fear and uncertainty within immigrant communities about what might be federal policy changes. And this is really just to allow our staff to do work that they have done before, to partner with some outside organizations on what might be a coordinated response. I will say one idea I personally have had is whether we might do something kind of similar to what we do already today with tenant services. We have a contract, RFP contract with Homeline, and then for a set amount of money, and then they are there as the entity that provides legal advice and other types of support services to tenants. There are numerous nonprofit organizations that provide legal advice and support services for immigrant community, and I think we're going to need to find how do we partner to support our residents in a time of uncertainty. This is really just a small amount of money to be a stake in working with other outside partners. I have talked about it with the staff groups listed here, and I've also talked with the city coordinator's office, and due to some reductions in partnership funds that we know are coming in 2017, this will be accommodated within budget.
Thank you very much, Council Vice President. Seeing additional comments, we'll go to Councilmember Gordon, followed by Councilmember Warsami.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am very supportive of this. Glad to see the initiative coming forward, and we're doing this. I've heard about some health centers that have opened in other cities, and hundreds of people show up. It's more than expected. I don't think we really know yet how many people are worried, frightened, scared, uncertain about what to do, and want to seek some kind of advice. And I think it's totally appropriate. In fact, I think it's an obligation that we have as the city government to help facilitate that and provide those resources for that. So I would say that I don't know that this $35,000 is going to be enough, but obviously this is teeing up more. What can we leverage? What other partners can we bring in? What will it look like? There may even need to be open houses and centers where people can go at certain times. I think hopefully we'll be nimble enough so that if there's some startling news and things of greater concern before March 31st, we'll be ready to respond and spend the money if we have to. But I appreciate that that's in the way we usually set dates for these things. That's a pretty early date too, so we should have some good information coming out near the end of the first quarter on this, and I am very supportive. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Warsami.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add my voice to support this motion by Vice President Glidden. I think this is it's an important time, and it's for our city and for immigrant families. And I would like to thank her for her leadership on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The $35,000, is that what is the source of that? Is that existing, or where are we drawing that from?
So it's listed in the first line of the motion, directing the city coordinator office to designate $35,000 of one-time budget resources. So that's within their budget that we are asking them to designate those funds.
So what is that money earmarked for right now? the 35,000?
So within the coordinator's budget, I mean, they get a budget amount, and so it's not that all of their activities are earmarked. I have talked with the coordinator's office, and I know that there are some reductions coming in some of the things that they fund through their department. One of those is they fund many of the city's partnerships with boards, outside boards that city members sit on, and we do know already of at least 2 of those boards where there will be some significant reductions in our obligations from 2016 to 2017. So that is how I know, and the city coordinator's office also acknowledges that they will have room and flexibility within their budget for this amount.
Okay, thank you. I was just looking back at my email that I had sent to city staff on this very issue on November 17th that I never got a response on. So this is a bit of a surprise for me since I have not heard about this updates on this important work. I would like to make a friendly amendment to add the communications department to this to explicitly ensure that they are participating in this conversation because I know that's going to be really important for us to be able to communicate in multilingual messages, whatever it is that the city's work on this front will be. Thank you.
Councilmember Glidden, could you respond?
Yes, that sounds like a very good amendment, and I'll just kind of respond as well to other council members who've identified that this is a source that we wish was more, and if there are other ideas on that, I will say maybe there might be opportunities also after staff reports back on a proposal and a plan to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, which again is kind of similar to how this worked in 2015. And to Councilmember Cano, I apologize. This kind of came together fairly quickly, as sometimes these budget amendments are, and this is a little different than just the coordinating of the work, but trying to identify a source that could be the city's ability to kind of say, yes, we are a financial partner in the work.
Councilmember Cano, did you have further questions?
I just think my point was I had asked city staff, our city leadership to ask, to respond to this very question over, almost, since November of 2017. I'm sorry, November 17th of this year. So I'm just a little annoyed by that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Well, thank you. Rather than taking a separate vote on the amendment, I think that we'll conclude that all coordinators, departments, including communications, would be a part of the staff direction. So all those in favor of Council Vice President Glidden's staff direction as proposed, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much. Councilmember Glidden, you had another motion?
This is another staff direction, and it's getting passed out right now. Wait a minute, I might not have enough. Pass that one down too. This is a staff direction that I had worked with the finance department, neighborhood and community relations, and the coordinator administration to draft essentially give a little bit more direction for staff to put together a proposal for participatory budgeting that then they will bring back to the council for our discussion and, if necessary, action on. So it's I don't know that I need to read the whole motion to colleagues, but this again is input from our staff on how they think they would go about doing that to be able to bring an appropriate proposal to us.
Thank you. I saw a very interesting session at the National League of Cities on this topic. And of course, participatory budgeting is included within this year's budget. And I think it's appropriate to add some structure around that through this staff direction, especially putting a time deadline to come back to Ways and Means Committee. So I'm very excited about that. There's any other questions, comments on this staff direction? Not seeing any. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand this staff direction. I just don't know a heck of a lot about participatory budgeting. And I'm ambivalent to support something that I just don't fully understand at this point.
Okay. Do you have a question, or should?
Well, I guess my question
General?
is, I mean, you know, I may very well be 100% in support of it. Is there a reason that we're doing it through this budgetary process as opposed to having a presentation and then voting on it that way?
Okay. Councilmember Glidden?
So, Councilmember Fry, there is some funding in the Finance Department's budget, in the mayor's proposed budget within the Finance Department, that's designated to exploring participatory budgeting. And so I think this is to do exactly what you're asking,
Right.
is to put together information for us as a council to consider this as a process and then be able to see if we are able to agree that we could incorporate it into our budgeting process moving forward. Participatory budgeting is a process that I will just say is used around the world. It's used in many more countries. I think it's kind of more fledgling in the United States. Was it last year I took a trip to Brazil, and I'm forgetting when that happened. I wish it was this year. And I visited a city that had utilized participatory budgeting in a number of ways in certain portions of their budget. I know other council members here have visited other cities around the United States where those cities are trying to use participatory budgeting. Kind of in general, this is a theory where you're taking some portion of your budget and seeking some direct input from residents on how to allocate those dollars. Some cities use a very small discretionary pot of money. Others do different kinds of things. It's really very flexible. It's kind of how we would try to decide how to utilize it. I'll give one example. The mayor of Boston had identified a certain amount of money. I think it was $1 million. And he used it for seeking youth input on how to designate that money for youth-related purposes. And I think that the upper end of who could vote, you had to be 24 years old or younger. And so he was trying to, again, it's a mechanism for encouraging direct participation, increasing participation and faith in how government works, and also just frankly understanding and transparency with public members of the public around how the budget works. I'll also just note that CLIC had a specific mention of using participatory budgeting in their report that they provided to us. It's one of the official comments within the CLIC report. And I know that the NCEC also took some sort of a motion supporting that statement by CLIC. So again, I think it's for us to take time and try to understand, but it is a very flexible program. It's not like by doing this, we're saying we're going to use participatory budgeting exactly this cookie cutter way. There is no cookie cutter way.
Generally speaking, and thank you for that analysis. That was very helpful in just providing a general framework. Do cities usually allocate a certain portion of money to it, and then it's not like the entire budget is done through participatory budgeting. It's here's $500,000. Let's figure out how best to spend it given the community's desires.
I have not seen a city in the United States where they have used their money that way. I think, again, they've looked for different kinds of ways that it makes sense. The city of Oakland, I know, just recently worked with a major foundation, I think the California Foundation, on a partnership on how they might decide how to use their CDBG funds using participatory budgeting. So I think again, it's kind of how we as a city would try to identify where would be an appropriate type of place within our budget. Is there an appropriate type of place where this could be effective and helpful and engaging of the public? I mean, the end goal is that we're kind of increasing our touch with the public and their participation in local government in a good partnership way.
Thank you. That's helpful. I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you. And Councilmember Glidden did bring up a lot of the points that I wanted to bring up. I think we also did hear some testimony at the public hearing supporting this from Jeffrey Strand, who serves on CLIC, who expressly mentioned this. He also serves on the Neighborhood Community Engagement Commission. I also want to note that I actually think that Minneapolis was probably on the bleeding edge of this in the past because this is very much like the old neighborhood revitalization program, which actually took some revenue and let participation process from the community help determine how it was spent. So it wasn't called that then, so this might be a new term sort of for something that could be similar. Well, I'm not, this definitely wouldn't necessarily repeat. Well, and that, so I couldn't.
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Gordon.
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear, I couldn't hear Councilmember Goodman's comments on that. Could I finish?
I think. Good. Thank you.
It's probably the parallel to that would come up anyway. I mean, I don't know why we'd want to hide the fact that we have had some history of using tools kind of like this in the past. So I'll try not to bring it up again if people would prefer that. But I just think that's there's probably other ways that it's been done. It's very interesting. In some cities that you look at that have done this, actually, the wards and the council offices have a large capital budget that they have discretion over. And so in Chicago and somewhere else, that's how it's done. So it's controlled in many different ways, many different areas. And it's almost always just a portion of the budget. If people want to learn more, I'm sure you could just Google participatory budgeting and you'll find a whole lot of information about it too, because it's definitely out there. So people can look at that. Oh, okay. So it's something a lot of people are discussing and exploring and looking at how to do that. So I think for us to get in depth and do a study and get some information back will be very, very helpful.
Thank you. Council Vice President? You're out. Okay. Councilmember Goodman.
I appreciate your explanation, Councilmember Glidden. I didn't really know anything about this, but it sounds a lot like what we did with the Public Health Advisory Committee, making decisions with regard to CDBG funding. They were the ones that actually moved us in the direction of focusing on seniors and youth violence, and then figured out how to use that money, which broke the log jam of nonprofits that were all asking us for money. So if it's something like that, and or something like Click, I think it would be a good thing. I don't know that we want to leave out there the idea that $20 million per year for 20 years would be allocated through a participatory budgeting process as a first step. And I just want to clarify on your timing. You're not suggesting we do this next year. You're suggesting we study it next year to implement in 2018?
So just to respond to Councilmember Goodman, correct. This is, I mean, it would completely fail if we tried to do it next year because we have spent no time trying to design and decide what do we agree upon and then work with community members on how do we design a process. The whole point is that you're engaging in designing something that can find support.
Thank you. Not seeing any further comments, questions on this item. All those in favor of the staff direction by Council Vice President Glidden, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much. Are there other amendments or staff directions that people would care to bring out? At the moment, I'm not seeing any. So I do have one out. I had sent it around prior to our recess. This is a staff direction by myself for the Convention Center fund use and downtown asset analysis. And what this staff direction does essentially is to create a staff committee. It'll operate similar to our facility space and management committee. It'll be led by our city coordinator, and it'll really evaluate the operational needs and make recommendations on the capital investments that we'll need to make over the next number of years for our downtown assets, which I've outlined as in item number 3 of that is really beyond just the convention center. It also includes Target Center, it includes PV Plaza, the Commons. We could extend that and include the Hennepin Theater Trust and other assets that are within the downtown zone that are really part of our economic vitality, not just for the work that they do, but also for the sales taxes that they generate. So that's the basis of the staff direction is to what was used as the convention center fund, which could be controversial. We really wanted to make sure it was tight usage on the concept of it being for the capital intention of all downtown assets, not just the convention center, and to really come with a more thorough analysis of the needs and expectations as part of that recommendation, which I set for the first plan to be submitted back by March 1st of 2017. So those are my comments on that, and on the staff direction. I invite any other comments or questions on that staff direction. Not seeing anyone. Thank you very much. All those in favor of the staff direction as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item carries. Thank you. With that, colleagues, I think we've concluded the consideration of the amendments and staff directions for the proposed 2017 budget at this time. We expect additional amendments to be considered at the council meeting prior to its final adoption. So with that, I'd like to move approval of the proposed 2017 budget as submitted by Mayor Hodges and as further amended by this subcommittee today, with a recommendation for adoption by the full City Council at its adjourned session on Wednesday, December 7th, 2017. I hope I got that date correct. Thank you. And that begins at 6:05. Is there any discussion on that motion? I have Council Member Johnson, Council President Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak more at wrap up at the end, if I can, please,
Okay.
before we adjourn.
Sure. Thank you very much. Council Member Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if you could just sort of briefly clarify the intention of the last staff direction that we just voted on it.
Yeah.
But there was just some discussion here amongst ourselves, and just in terms of what this does to the availability of those funds that had been intended for the convention center.
It doesn't do anything with the funds as presented, but it really sets up a staff direction that has the committee that'll say make recommended uses for those funds in the coming year and beyond. But that report would be doing back in March of 17. But I think the intent is obviously saying that these funds will not be spent as part of the budget process this year until that recommendation and full-throated analysis has been provided to the council as through the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So on the motion, I'm sorry? Yes. Council President, did you want to do that after we took the vote on this? I just wanted to be clear. Okay, but before adjournment. Thank you. On the motion as presented, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item, it does carry. Thank you very much for your work. Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have been disturbed, I guess I would say, by a communication that went out to members of the list, I guess, from one of my colleagues that reported that last year on the day of the final budget vote, I was given a few hours notice that Councilmember Blongyang and Barb Johnson planned to make a motion to invest $600,000 to expand the 4th precinct. And I just want to make it very clear, our motion was not at the time to expand the 4th precinct. It was to deal with the property damage that had been created. And so I hesitate to do this, but when I'm called out, I really want to clarify about what actually happened. So Councilmember Yang and I did not intend to expand the 4th precinct. The other thing I will point out, the city's budget from this communication, city's budget is not $1.3 million, it's $1.3 billion. So billion, somebody else's money, I guess. So anyway, I just find it frustrating to have misinformation presented to city residents.
Thank you. Further comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And I do need to take a second just to thank the finance staff, all who have been assembled here, but more who are assembled upstairs, who have done so much work on this presentation, as well as Mayor Hodges for initiating the budget recommendation back in August. And for all of my colleagues, thank you for joining us through the budget hearings and for this meeting today for a complete, robust conversation. Seeing we have no further business before us today, this subcommittee is adjourned.